You will stand behind the guests, Miss Vale. A governess does not sit among gentlemen. Lady Euphemia Harcourt said it loudly enough for the entire drawing-room to hear. Amelia Vale stopped beside the long dining table, with one hand resting against the back of the chair a footman had just pulled out for her. 30 faces turned toward her. Candlelight trembled across silver tureens, crystal glasses, Paris silk pearls, velvet cuffs, and white gloves. The fire burned high at the far end of Ravenshade Hall, but Amelia suddenly felt colder than she had outside in the rain. Lady Euphemia lifted one finger. Not there. The footman froze. Amelia looked at the empty chair. Then at the guests. A young baronet covered his mouth, but not before a laugh escaped him. 2 ladies beside him exchanged smiles. Someone whispered that the new governess had forgotten herself already. Lady Euphemia smiled. You may remain behind, Miss Rosamond. You are paid to observe her, after all. More laughter moved down the table. Amelia released the chair. Then the Duke of Greyhaven rose from his place. And before that evening was over, a secret would begin to stir beneath Ravenshade Hall, one capable of changing far more than the place where a poor governess was permitted to sit. Before we return to the beginning, tell us where you are listening from tonight. If stories of forgotten women, proud houses, and justice long delayed speak to you, subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next chapter. And if you wish to support the channel, your kindness helps these stories continue. Now let us go back to the winter when Amelia Vale first came to Ravenshade Hall. 3 weeks earlier, Amelia had arrived at the estate in a hired carriage that leaked rain through its roof. She had owned 1 trunk. Inside it were 2 serviceable dresses, 3 collars, a pair of gloves, mended at both thumbs, a worn book of French grammar, and £12 carefully sewn into the lining of a cloth purse. £12 was everything she possessed. At 27, Amelia had already learned that poverty did not always arrive with hunger. Sometimes it came with politeness, with waiting, with accepting the smallest room in a respectable house and thanking the person who offered it. Her father had been a schoolmaster in a village near Bath. He had taught Latin to boys whose families paid late, and English history to girls whose parents considered the subject unnecessary. When he died after a short winter illness, he left no property and almost no savings. Amelia sold his books. She paid the physician. She paid the landlord. Then she began answering advertisements. Ravenshade Hall offered £40 a year meals, lodging, and responsibility for Lady Rosamond Harcourt, a girl of 15, whose mother had died when she was very young. It was more money than Amelia had ever earned. The position had seemed like rescue. The first person to receive her at Ravenshade was not Lady Euphemia. It was Mrs. Finch, an elderly housemaid with narrow shoulders and hands reddened from hot water. Mrs. Finch took Amelia's wet cloak. Best dry that near the kitchen fire, miss. Her ladyship dislikes damp garments in the upper passages. Amelia smiled. Thank you. Mrs. Finch glanced toward the staircase before lowering her voice. And keep your papers close. Amelia looked at her. My papers, your references. Letters. Such things. Mrs. Finch immediately straightened. Then she added too brightly that Ravenshade was a very large house, and large houses had a way of swallowing small possessions. It was the first odd thing anyone said to Amelia. The second came that evening. Lady Euphemia Harcourt received her in the blue morning room beneath a portrait of Amelia's late employer, though Amelia did not yet know who the woman in the portrait was. Euphemia was tall, broad-shouldered, and magnificently dressed. Her gown was dark green. A square emerald sat at her throat. Nothing about her expression was openly cruel. That would have been simpler. She was controlled, measured. A woman who could make humiliation sound like instruction. You understand, Miss Vale, that my stepdaughter is of an excitable nature. Amelia folded her hands. I was told Lady Rosamond requires instruction in French literature, music, and household accounts, among other things. Euphemia paused. Her mother indulged her terribly. Amelia glanced at the portrait. The woman painted there had gentle eyes. You knew her mother. Euphemia's smile thinned. Everyone knew Lady Marianne. That was all she said. The room fell quiet. For the first time since entering the house, Amelia heard the wind pressing against the tall windows. Not sorrow, not remembrance. Something more guarded had passed across Euphemia's face. Then it was gone. Rosamond entered 5 minutes later. She was not excitable. She was frightened. Amelia saw it before the girl spoke. Rosamond looked toward the doorway whenever footsteps sounded in the corridor. She apologized when she dropped a pencil. She asked permission before touching books that belonged to her own family. Yet she was intelligent, painfully so. Within a week, Amelia discovered that Rosamond read French, fluently understood estate arithmetic better than many clerks, and possessed an astonishing memory for names, rents, dates, and conversations. But whenever Amelia praised her, Rosamond seemed uneasy. "Do not tell Papa." "Why not? He might tell Lady Euphemia." Amelia waited. Rosamond lowered her voice. "She says cleverness makes women difficult to marry." The words were childish in their delivery. The fear beneath them was not. Amelia did not criticize Lady Euphemia. A governess survived by learning which truths could be spoken and which had to be carried silently. Instead, she placed the account book back before Rosamond. "Then perhaps we shall become very difficult indeed." Rosamond stared. For one heartbeat, Amelia wondered whether she had gone too far. Then the girl laughed. It was a small laugh. The first Amelia had heard from her. From that day, their lessons changed. They still studied French in the mornings. They still read poetry beside the schoolroom fire. But Amelia also taught Rosamond how to examine household figures, how to add columns twice, how to notice when the same expense appeared on 2 different pages, how to distinguish a mistake from a pattern. It was not rebellion, it was education. That distinction would later matter. The first pattern appeared 11 days after Amelia's arrival. Rosamond was copying figures from an old estate ledger when she stopped. "Miss Vale." Amelia looked up. "Here," Rosamond pointed. The entry concerned income from 3 tenant farms on the southern boundary of Ravenshade. The previous year's amount was listed. The present year's amount was lower, much lower. Amelia examined the figures. Perhaps repairs were made. Rosamond shook her head. There would be a separate entry. Amelia looked at her more carefully. "How do you know Mama taught me?" The room seemed to contract. "Your mother taught you estate accounts." "Before she died." Rosamond touched one number. She said a lady who could read a household book could not easily be made a fool in her own house. Amelia said nothing. Silence settled between them, not because the lesson had become difficult, because someone else had been teaching Rosamond to become helpless. Amelia closed the ledger. "We should put this away." Rosamond's face changed. "Have I done something wrong?" "No, not wrong, only unfinished." It was the first time in Amelia's life that she felt the difference between knowledge and safety. That afternoon, while Rosamond practiced scales in the music room, Amelia went to the servants' corridor to return a borrowed key. She heard voices through a partly open door. Lady Euphemia spoke first. "The girl asks questions because of that governess," a man's voice answered. Amelia recognized Mr. Pritchard, the estate steward, then dismissed the governess. "Not yet." A pause followed. Paper rustled. Euphemia spoke more quietly. "Rosamond turns 16 in the spring. By then everything must be settled. Everything. The trust." Amelia stopped breathing. Mr. Pritchard lowered his voice so far that Amelia caught only fragments. "Lady Marianne, solicitor, to original schedule." Then Euphemia said something clearly. "If that document still exists, find it before anyone else does." Amelia stepped away. Her heart struck hard against her ribs. She did not wait to hear more. In the schoolroom, Rosamond was still playing the same passage. Amelia stood near the door until her breathing steadied. She had been employed to teach grammar and music. She had no right to interfere in family money. She had no proof of wrongdoing. Only words overheard through a door. Only a missing sum. Only the sudden knowledge that Rosamond's birthday appeared to matter greatly to her stepmother. Amelia wanted to dismiss it. That would have been sensible. Instead, she remembered Mrs. Finch. "Keep your papers close." At supper below stairs, Amelia found the old housemaid cutting bread near the kitchen range. The servants ate differently from the family above. Brown stew, boiled potatoes, coarse bread, apple preserve spread thinly enough to see the crust beneath. Amelia sat beside Mrs. Finch. "Did Lady Marianne keep papers in the schoolroom?" Mrs. Finch's knife stopped, only for a moment. Then it continued. "Why would you ask that Lady Rosamond mentioned that her mother taught her from estate books?" Mrs. Finch looked toward the kitchen door. Lady Marianne knew every acre attached to Ravenshade. More than his lordship did, some said. His lordship Rosamond's father, the Earl of Ravenshade. Amelia had met him twice. Lord Edmund Harcourt was a tired man of 55 who seemed permanently distracted by his own household. He was not unkind. That was perhaps the worst of it. He greeted Rosamond with affection, then allowed Euphemia to answer every question directed at his daughter. He asked Amelia whether the lessons went well, but never waited long enough to hear the answer. He loved peace, and because he loved peace, everyone around him paid for it. Mrs. Finch pushed the breadbasket toward Amelia. Lady Marianne had a little writing room beside the old library. Locked now. Why Lady Euphemia's orders? Amelia kept her voice casual. Since when? Since 3 days after Lady Marianne was buried. The kitchen noise continued around them. Pans struck iron. Water hissed. A kitchen maid laughed, because the cook had accused a turnip of being better educated than the new footman. Mrs. Finch did not laugh. She leaned closer. Some doors are locked to keep thieves out, Miss Vale. Her eyes lifted. Others are locked to keep the truth in. Then she rose and carried her plate away. Amelia slept badly that night. Rain moved against the windows. The small fire in her room sank to red ash before midnight. By morning she had made a decision. She would do nothing reckless. She would watch. That was all. For the first time in her life, Amelia understood that caution did not always mean obedience. Sometimes caution meant remembering. She began remembering everything. Dates, names, amounts, which servants carried letters, which drawers Lady Euphemia kept locked, which guests caused Mr. Pritchard to become nervous, and above all she watched Rosamond. The girl received 2 letters during the following week. Amelia saw both arrive. Rosamond received neither. The first came on a Tuesday morning. A footman placed it on the silver tray with the rest of the post. Amelia noticed the handwriting, because Rosamond had shown her an old Christmas card bearing the same hand, Aunt Isolde. Lady Marianne's unmarried sister. By luncheon the letter had disappeared. Rosamond never mentioned it. The second came 3 days later. This time, Amelia watched from the upper corridor. A maid carried the post into Lady Euphemia's morning room. 10 minutes afterward, Amelia smelled burning paper. The fireplace was roaring despite the mild afternoon. Euphemia stood before it. Something white curled among the coals. Amelia continued walking. She did not turn her head. That evening, Rosamond asked quietly whether letters from London could take more than a fortnight. Amelia's chest tightened. Why? I wrote to Aunt Isolde. When 3 weeks ago. Have you had no reply? Rosamond shook her head. Perhaps she no longer wants me. Amelia looked at the girl. No. It came out too quickly. Rosamond blinked. Amelia corrected herself. Do not assume silence means rejection. Sometimes silence is only distance. Sometimes it is interference. Rosamond studied her. Do you know something Amelia wanted to tell her? Instead, she said the one thing she could safely promise. I know we should not judge a person by a letter we have not seen. 3 days later came the dinner. The Duke of Greyhaven had arrived at Ravenshade for a week of shooting and estate business. He was 41, widowed, and possessed enough land that half the county seemed to adjust its manners when he entered a room. Amelia first saw him from the schoolroom window. He dismounted in the rain rather than waiting for a groom to steady the horse. He thanked the stable boy who took the reins. That alone made him unusual at Ravenshade. His name was Julian Ashcombe. He had known Lord Edmund for years. At dinner on his second evening, Lady Euphemia ordered that Rosamond attend. Amelia was required to accompany her. A footman, assuming Amelia had been invited as a minor guest, pulled out an extra chair. That mistake created the humiliation. You will stand behind the guests, Miss Vale. A governess does not sit among gentlemen. The laughter followed. Amelia stood perfectly still. Rosamond flushed crimson. Papa. Lord Edmund looked down at his plate. Euphemia smiled. Do not make a scene, Rosamond. It was not a dramatic betrayal. No shouting, no cruelty. Only a father choosing comfort over his daughter's shame. Amelia moved behind Rosamond's chair. She could have survived that. She had survived worse things, said in quieter rooms. Then the Duke stood. He placed one hand on the back of his chair. Lady Euphemia looked at him. Your Grace, Julian Ashcombe lifted the chair from the table. He carried it himself. No servant dared move. He set it beside Rosamond. Then he turned to Amelia. "Miss Vale, you may have mine." The room went still. Amelia stared. "Your Grace, I could not." "You could." Euphemia's face hardened. "Surely you do not mean to encourage confusion between servants and guests." The Duke looked at her. "No." His voice was calm. "I mean to discourage confusion between rank and manners." No one laughed. For the first time in her life, Amelia saw how quickly cruelty could retreat when someone more powerful refused to admire it, not because Euphemia had become ashamed, because she had been challenged. Julian remained standing until Amelia sat. Then he accepted a smaller chair brought by a terrified footman. Dinner continued. But something had shifted. Rosamond ate almost nothing. Lord Edmund spoke too loudly about horses. Lady Euphemia barely touched her wine, and Amelia felt eyes on her from every side. After dessert, she left as soon as propriety allowed. In the corridor, Mrs. Finch caught her sleeve. "Come." The old woman led Amelia down the servants' passage, not toward the kitchen, toward the old library. Mrs. Finch stopped beside a narrow panel half hidden by a tapestry. "You made her angry tonight." Amelia swallowed. "I did nothing. That is why she is angry." Mrs. Finch reached inside her apron. She placed a small brass key into Amelia's palm. Amelia stared at it. "What is this?" "The key Lady Marianne gave me 3 days before she died." The corridor seemed to darken. Mrs. Finch pointed toward the locked writing room. "She told me that if anyone ever began asking about Rosamond's money, I was to give it to someone who could count." Amelia could hear her own pulse. "Why did you wait?" "Because I was afraid." Mrs. Finch's mouth trembled. Then she looked toward the stairs. "And because until tonight I did not know whether you would bend." A door opened somewhere above them. Both women froze. Footsteps approached. Mrs. Finch closed Amelia's fingers around the key. "Inside that room is a black writing box. Do not take it. Do not even move it. Only look." "Why?" "Because Lady Euphemia checks the dust." The footsteps drew nearer. Amelia hid the key in her sleeve. Mrs. Finch turned away. Then Amelia saw something on the floor beside the library door. A torn scrap of paper. Only 3 lines remained. "Rosamond Harcourt, held in trust until her 16th year." And beneath them, written in another hand, one figure had been crossed out and replaced with a much smaller sum. Amelia did not bend to pick up the scrap. That was the first decision she made. The second was to keep walking. Mrs. Finch had already disappeared toward the servants' stairs when the footsteps reached the turn of the corridor. Amelia slipped her hands beneath the folds of her skirt and moved slowly toward the schoolroom, as if she had simply lost her way after dinner. Mr. Pritchard appeared. He carried a lamp. Its light struck the walls in a narrow yellow circle. "Miss Vale." Amelia stopped. Mr. Pritchard was a thin man of perhaps 50, with grey hair combed flat and a habit of looking at people as though they were columns in a ledger he did not trust. "Mr. Pritchard," he glanced behind her. "This wing is not used in the evening." "I had noticed." "Then why are you here?" Amelia gave him the truth, but not all of it. "I was looking for the schoolroom staircase." He studied her face. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched. Not because Amelia had been caught, because he was deciding whether she knew she had almost been. At last Mr. Pritchard stepped aside. "The stairs are the other way." "Thank you." She walked past him. Only when she reached her room did she realize how tightly she had been holding her hands. The little brass key had cut a crescent into her palm. She sat beside the cold fireplace. She could still see the words on the torn paper, "Held in trust until her 16th year." Rosamond would turn 16 in less than 4 months. Amelia did not sleep. At dawn she began with the safest question, not about the trust, not about Euphemia, about Lady Marianne. During the morning lesson, Rosamond was translating a passage from French when Amelia asked whether her mother had ever taken her to London. Rosamond's pencil paused. "Once, when I was 9. Do you remember where you stayed?" "With Aunt Isolde, a small house in Bloomsbury." Rosamond smiled faintly. "She had blue curtains and a bird that hated my father." Amelia smiled, despite herself. Why did the bird hate him? It bit him whenever he came near the cage. Perhaps it was an excellent judge of character. Rosamond looked alarmed. Amelia raised one hand. "A poor joke." For a second, Rosamond tried to resist. Then she laughed. The sound faded quickly. Auntie Zolda stopped visiting after Mama died. Did your father explain why Lady Euphemia said they had quarrelled? About what? Rosamond shook her head. I asked once. Papa told me not to trouble myself with old sorrows. Amelia returned to the French passage, but a new peace had settled into place. A dead mother, a living sister in London. Letters that never reached Rosamond. A locked writing room, a trust connected to Rosamond's 16th year, and a stepmother who had ordered the dead woman's room sealed 3 days after the burial. It was too much to ignore. Yet Amelia still had nothing she could safely call proof. That afternoon she found Mrs. Finch in the linen room. The old woman was folding sheets. Amelia closed the door. How did Lady Marianne die? Mrs. Finch's hands stopped. A fever. Amelia waited. Mrs. Finch resumed folding. At least that is what they said. What do you mean? The old woman looked at her. Do not ask questions if you cannot bear the answers. I would prefer difficult answers to comfortable lies. Mrs. Finch gave a faint, humorless smile. That sounds like something Lady Marianne would have said. She folded one sheet, then another. Lady Marianne was ill for nearly 3 weeks. Weakness first, then confusion. She would forget where she had put things. Once she woke in the night and said the wallpaper was moving. They called Dr. Weatherby. Did he treat her? At first, Mrs. Finch lowered her voice. Then Lady Euphemia brought another physician from London. Dr. Weatherby was told his services were no longer required. Why? They said he was old-fashioned. Was he? Mrs. Finch snorted. He delivered half the babies in the county and buried the other half's grandparents. Amelia almost smiled. It was the first moment of humour Mrs. Finch had allowed herself. Then the old woman's face hardened again. Lady Marianne grew worse. She said her tea tasted bitter. She accused Mr. Pritchard of moving papers from her writing room. Lord Edmund said she was feverish. Lady Euphemia said she was becoming unstable, and people believed her. Amelia felt cold. Did Lady Marianne have a history of illness? Never. Mrs. Finch pressed a sheet flat with both hands. She rode in winter, managed estate accounts, could remember every tenant's name. Then suddenly she could not remember whether she had eaten breakfast. Amelia looked toward the door. Did anyone investigate? Who would investigate the illness of a countess when her husband said the physicians had done all they could? The answer was obvious. No one. Not servants, not tenants, not a governess who had not yet arrived. Mrs. Finch leaned closer. Miss Vale, if you open that writing room, you must understand something. What? If there is nothing inside, you will still have made an enemy. And if there is something inside, then you may already have one. That night, Amelia waited. Ravenshade Hall settled slowly. Doors closed. Fires were banked. Footmen carried the last trays below stairs. Somewhere in the west wing, a clock struck 11. Amelia sat fully dressed beside her bed. She waited until midnight. Then she took the key. The corridors were dark, except for one lamp near the main staircase. She carried no candle. A candle would announce her. She moved by memory. Down the narrow passage, past the portrait gallery, past the library. The writing room door stood exactly where Mrs. Finch had described. Small, oak, almost invisible beside the larger library entrance. Amelia inserted the key. It turned without resistance. She opened the door. The air inside was stale, cold. The curtains were drawn. Moonlight leaked through one narrow gap. She closed the door behind her. For several seconds, she could see almost nothing. Then shapes emerged. A desk, 2 chairs, a narrow bookcase, a small fireplace, and on the desk a black writing box. Amelia did not touch it. She remembered Mrs. Finch's warning. Lady Euphemia checks the dust. She leaned close. The box had a brass plate but no name. A thin line of dust covered the lid. At one corner, however, the dust had been disturbed. Recently, someone had opened it. Amelia crouched. The lock was small. The brass key in her hand did not fit. She examined the room instead. Most shelves were empty. 3 books remained. A household account manual, a volume of sermons, a book of poetry, nothing useful. Then Amelia noticed the desk drawer. It stood open by less than an inch. She did not pull it. She bent and looked. Something white lay inside. She could read only one word. Ashcombe. Her breath caught. The Duke's family name. Julian Ashcombe. Amelia straightened. She should leave. Instead, she looked beneath the desk. There, caught between the wall and the skirting board, was another scrap of paper. This one she could retrieve without disturbing the desk. She used a hairpin. Slowly, carefully. The paper slid forward. It was part of a letter. The top had been torn away. The bottom remained. Amelia read it in the moonlight. If Edmund cannot be persuaded to protect Rosamond's portion, I shall place copies with my sister and with Ashcombe. I will not allow my daughter to depend upon the mercy of a second wife I do not trust. Amelia read the lines twice. Then a sound came from the corridor. A floorboard. She froze. Another step. Someone was outside. Amelia folded the scrap once and slipped it beneath the edge of her sleeve. The door handle moved. She stepped behind the curtain. The door opened. Light entered. Mr. Pritchard. He carried a candle. He closed the door behind him. Amelia pressed herself against the wall. The curtain smelled of dust. Her heart beat so loudly she feared he would hear it. Mr. Pritchard crossed the room. He went directly to the black box. A key clicked. The lid opened. Paper moved. Then came another voice. Lady Euphemia. Did you find it? Amelia almost stopped breathing. Euphemia entered. Mr. Pritchard answered. No. Then it must be elsewhere. The sister. Possibly. She has not answered my letters, because she does not receive them. Amelia's pulse jumped. Pritchard gave a low laugh. You have become efficient. Necessary. Paper rustled again. Euphemia's voice sharpened. And Ashcombe, still at Ravenshade. I am aware of where he is. I mean, does he know anything? Pritchard hesitated. Not that I can tell. He knew Marianne well enough. Lady Euphemia said nothing for several seconds. Then she spoke. The Duke must leave without becoming curious. Miss Vale has already attracted his attention. She is a governess, a poor one. That does not prevent a man from becoming inconvenient. Amelia felt heat rise to her face. Not embarrassment. Anger. She understood suddenly that the dinner humiliation had not merely been cruelty. Euphemia had been testing boundaries, reminding Amelia, reminding Rosamond, reminding the entire room, and the Duke's chair had broken that arrangement. Mr. Pritchard lowered his voice. Should we dismiss her? Not yet. Rosamond trusts her. That can be useful. Useful how? If the girl becomes difficult, we blame the governess. A pause. Then Euphemia added, if necessary, we say, Miss Vale filled her head with suspicions. The house will believe it. A penniless governess against the Countess of Ravenshade, Mr. Pritchard chuckled. No contest at all. The room fell silent. Amelia stood behind the curtain and learned the exact shape of her danger. Not dismissal, discredit. There was a difference. A dismissed governess might find another position. A governess accused of manipulating a nobleman's daughter might never work again. She thought of her £12, her dead father, the advertisements she had answered, the women she had known who survived one bad reference only by entering domestic service. For the first time in her life, Amelia understood that fear could sharpen rather than weaken a person. She listened. Euphemia spoke again. Rosamond must sign the revised settlement in March, before her birthday, and if she refuses, she will not refuse. Pritchard was quiet. Then he asked, what about Lord Edmund? Lady Euphemia's answer came immediately. He will sign whatever keeps scandal from the family. Amelia closed her eyes. That she believed. Footsteps moved toward the door. She remained perfectly still until both had gone. Then she counted to 100. Twice. Only then did she leave. The next morning, Amelia behaved normally. That was harder than entering the writing room. She corrected Rosamond's French. She listened to scales. She drank tea. At noon, Lady Euphemia entered the schoolroom without knocking. Amelia rose. Rosamond stiffened. Euphemia smiled. Miss Vale, my lady, I trust you are comfortable here. Quite. No complaints. None. Euphemia walked around the table. She touched the French grammar book, then the arithmetic book, then Rosamond's account pages. Her fingers stopped. What is this practice? Rosamond answered too quickly. Household arithmetic. Euphemia looked at Amelia. You teach estate accounts, basic figures. I was not aware that was required. It is not. Then why Amelia met her gaze? Because Lady Rosamond is good at them. The silence that followed was almost physical. Euphemia smiled. Good at them. Yes. How unfortunate. Rosamond looked down. Amelia's jaw tightened. Lady Euphemia picked up one page. My stepdaughter does not need to understand rents and columns. Her husband will employ men for such things, Rosamond whispered. Mama taught me. Euphemia turned. The room went still. Rosamond's face drained of color. Euphemia crossed the space between them. Her voice became very soft. Your mother taught you many habits that are no longer useful. Amelia stepped closer. Lady Rosamond has completed today's lesson. Euphemia looked at her. I did not ask. No. Amelia forced herself to remain calm. But she has. For one long moment, Euphemia stared. Then she tore the account page in half. Not violently, carefully. Once, twice, 4 pieces. She placed them on the table. No more estate figures. Rosamond's eyes filled, but she did not cry. Euphemia turned toward the door. Miss Vale, come to my morning room at 3. After she left, Rosamond stared at the pieces. Amelia began gathering them. Do not. Rosamond's voice shook. Amelia stopped. It only makes her worse. What does... When people help me... Amelia sat beside her. Rosamond kept her eyes on the torn paper. Papa always says I should give her time. How much time? Rosamond looked up. Amelia regretted the question. Not because it was cruel, because the girl had clearly never been allowed to ask it. Rosamond whispered. She has had 8 years. There it was. 8 years. Enough time for a child to forget the sound of her mother's voice. Enough time for letters to disappear. Enough time for estate accounts to change. Amelia gathered the torn pages anyway. We are going to continue your lessons. Rosamond stared at her. Lady Euphemia said no. Then we shall not call them estate lessons. What will we call them? Arithmetic. For the first time that morning, Rosamond smiled. At 3, Amelia entered Lady Euphemia's morning room. The fire was high. A silver tea service waited on the table. Euphemia poured. Sit. Amelia sat. Euphemia added sugar to her own cup. None to Amelia's. I have received a complaint about you. From whom? That is not your concern. What is the complaint? That you have encouraged Lady Rosamond to question members of this household. Amelia folded her hands. I have encouraged her to ask questions during lessons. Do not play with language. I am not playing. Euphemia's smile disappeared. You are employed here because you require money. Amelia said nothing. £40 a year. Meals. A room. A respectable reference when you leave. Each word landed separately. £40. Meals. Room. Reference. Euphemia leaned back. A woman in your position should understand the value of gratitude. Amelia looked at the tea. Not because she feared poison. Not yet. Because the steam carried a faint, bitter smell. She remembered Mrs. Finch. Lady Marianne said her tea tasted bitter. Amelia did not touch the cup. Euphemia noticed. Not thirsty, I drank tea with Rosamond. Drink anyway. The instruction was casual, too casual. Amelia lifted the cup. She brought it toward her lips. Then her sleeve caught the saucer. Porcelain tipped. Tea spilled across the carpet. Amelia stood. Forgive me. Euphemia's expression changed. Only slightly. But enough. Not irritation. Disappointment. A maid was summoned. The carpet was blotted. The cup removed. The conversation ended. That evening Amelia went to the kitchen. She found the maid who had cleared the tea service. A girl named Bess, 17. Small, quick-eyed. Amelia waited until they were alone near the pantry. Did Lady Euphemia prepare the tray herself? Bess frowned. No, miss. Cook made the tea. Did anyone touch it? After Bess hesitated. Mr. Pritchard came through. Did he touch the cups? I don't know. Think. Bess looked frightened. Amelia softened her voice. You are not in trouble. Bess swallowed. He put something beside one saucer. A little paper packet. What color? Grey. Did you see what was inside? No. Bess looked toward the door. But I cleaned the cup afterward. And There was grit at the bottom. Amelia felt the room tilt, not from illness, from certainty. A maid, a discarded packet, a bitter cup, a dead countess who once complained of bitter tea. The truth was beginning where the great house least expected it. Below stairs, among people who were seen every day and noticed almost never. Amelia took Bess's hands. "Listen to me. Say nothing about this. To anyone." Bess's eyes widened. "Am I going to be dismissed?" "No, not if I can help it." That promise frightened Amelia the moment she made it. She had no power to protect Bess, no title, no money, no family. But she was beginning to understand something. Power was not always the same as position. Sometimes power was simply being the person who had kept the evidence. The next morning, Bess brought Amelia a folded scrap. "I found it behind the tray cupboard." Amelia opened it. Grey paper. Inside remained a trace of white powder. She folded it carefully. "Do not tell Mrs. Finch." "Why not?" "Because if Lady Euphemia realizes we are asking questions, she will dismiss the servants one by one." Bess nodded. Amelia hid the packet inside the lining of her sewing case. Then she made her second important decision. She would contact Aunt Isolde, not through Ravenshade, never through Ravenshade. On Saturday, Amelia requested permission to visit the village for thread and writing paper. Lady Euphemia allowed it. A governess buying thread was not suspicious. Amelia walked 2 miles in cold rain. Her shoes were soaked by the time she reached the village post office. She purchased paper. Then she wrote a short letter. "Dear Lady Isolde, you do not know me. My name is Amelia Vale, and I am governess to Lady Rosamond Harcourt. I believe letters sent between you and your niece have been intercepted. I ask only one question. Did Lady Marianne leave instructions concerning Rosamond's property before her death? Please do not reply to Ravenshade Hall." Amelia gave the address of a widow who kept the village lodging house, Mrs. Dallow. The widow knew nothing of the contents. She only knew Amelia sometimes purchased bread there on her afternoon walks. Amelia paid for the letter herself. 1 penny felt more dangerous than £40. For 6 days nothing happened. Then the failure came. Lady Euphemia summoned Amelia after breakfast. The letter lay on her desk, unopened. Amelia stopped. Euphemia touched it with one finger. "Did you lose something in the village?" Amelia stared. How Euphemia smiled. "Mrs. Dallow's nephew works for Mr. Pritchard." The room became very quiet. Not a sound from the corridor, not a coal shifting in the fire. Nothing. Euphemia leaned forward. "You have disappointed me." Amelia said nothing. "You were warned." Still nothing. Euphemia lifted the letter. "I could dismiss you this morning." "Why do you not?" "Because I think dismissal would frighten Rosamond." She smiled. "And I do not wish to frighten her. Not yet." Amelia understood the threat. Euphemia placed the letter in the fire. The edge blackened. The paper curled. Amelia watched her words disappear. She had failed. Worse, she had revealed herself. By evening her movements were watched. Mr. Pritchard appeared whenever she entered the lower passages. Bess was transferred from the pantry to the laundry. Mrs. Finch stopped speaking to Amelia in public. Rosamond was forbidden to walk with her beyond the east garden. For 3 days Amelia believed she had ruined everything. Then on the 4th night someone knocked softly on her door. 3 times. Pause. Twice. Amelia opened it. Mrs. Finch stood outside. She held no candle. "Come." "Where?" "The kitchen." Amelia followed. Below stairs the servants had gone to bed. Only the embers remained. Mrs. Finch led her to the cold pantry. Bess was waiting. So was a man Amelia had never seen. He was elderly, stooped. His coat was wet from the road. He held a black physician's bag. Mrs. Finch closed the door. "Miss Vale, this is Dr. Weatherby." Amelia stared. The physician Lady Euphemia had removed from Lady Marianne's sick room 8 years earlier. Dr. Weatherby removed his gloves. His eyes were tired. Mrs. Finch sent word that certain questions were being asked again. Amelia reached into her sewing basket and produced the grey paper packet. She placed it on the table. Dr. Weatherby did not touch it. "Where did you get this?" "From a tea tray intended for me." The old physician looked at her. "Who prepared it?" Amelia told him. He listened without interruption. Then she told him about Lady Marianne. The bitter tea, the confusion, the tremors. The London physician. When she finished, Dr. Weatherby sat down. For a long time he said nothing. Then he opened his bag. From inside he removed a folded bundle of papers tied with faded cord. I kept these because I was ashamed. Amelia's throat tightened. Of what? Of allowing myself to be dismissed. He untied the cord. My notes from Lady Marianne's illness. Mrs. Finch covered her mouth. Dr. Weatherby looked at Amelia. I could not prove what caused her symptoms. Not then. But I wrote everything down. He turned one page. Here. Amelia leaned closer. His handwriting was small but clear. Confusion after tea. Improvement when fluids withheld. Relapse after evening dose. Bitter residue reported by patient. Dr. Weatherby turned another page. Then another. On the last sheet a name appeared. Mr. Pritchard. Amelia looked up. Dr. Weatherby spoke very quietly. The night before Lady Marianne died, she begged me to send for her sister. He swallowed. And for the Duke of Greyhaven. Amelia felt every sound in the pantry disappear. Why the Duke? The physician looked at her. Because Miss Vale, Lady Marianne told me that Julian Ashcombe had witnessed the original terms of Rosamond's trust. Amelia did not speak for several seconds. Dr. Weatherby had said the name plainly. Julian Ashcombe, the Duke of Greyhaven. The same man who had given Amelia his chair before an entire room. The same man Lady Euphemia wanted gone before he became curious. The same man Lady Marianne had tried to summon on the night before she died. Amelia looked at the physician. What exactly did Lady Marianne say? Dr. Weatherby rested both hands on the table. She said Rosamond's future had been arranged years before, not merely spoken of, written, witnessed. She said her husband had agreed to it while she was still well, and the Duke witnessed it. Yes. Was he present when the document was signed? I do not know. Amelia frowned. But you said, I said, Lady Marianne wanted him summoned because he knew the original terms. That is not the same thing. Dr. Weatherby looked at her carefully. You must learn that difference, Miss Vale, if you mean to survive this. Proof was not suspicion. Memory was not paper. A powerful man's recollection was not enough if the opposing side possessed documents bearing signatures. Amelia understood. For the first time in her life she began to see truth, not as a moral certainty, but as something that had to be assembled. Piece by piece, witness by witness, paper by paper. She turned toward Mrs. Finch. The black writing box. What is inside? Mrs. Finch shook her head. I never saw, but Lady Marianne guarded it. Dr. Weatherby asked. Can it be opened? There is another key. Who has it? Mrs. Finch looked at Amelia. Lady Euphemia. That answer changed the room, Bess whispered. Then it is no use. Amelia turned to her. No. The girl blinked. Amelia continued. It is useful because Lady Euphemia believes it matters. Dr. Weatherby nodded slowly. Good. Amelia looked at the old physician's notes. If she is still searching for the original paper, then she does not have it, or she is uncertain whether a copy exists. Exactly. Mrs. Finch rubbed her hands together. But where would Lady Marianne have put it? Amelia remembered the letter fragment. Copies with my sister, and with Ashcombe, Aunt Isolde, the Duke. Perhaps the writing box contained nothing more than correspondence, proving that copies had been sent. Perhaps that was enough. Amelia turned to Dr. Weatherby. Will you allow me to copy your notes? The physician hesitated. If these papers become public, I may be accused of holding them for 8 years without acting. Did you act? His face tightened. Not enough. That is not what I asked. He looked at her. I tried to speak to Lord Edmund, and he told me grief had confused the household. Did you speak to anyone else? Dr. Weatherby nodded. A solicitor in London. Name Mr. Ellison. Did he know Lady Marianne? I believe so. Amelia leaned forward. Then we need him. Mrs. Finch looked alarmed. Need him for what? To tell us whether the trust existed. Dr. Weatherby shook his head. If he is still practicing, then we find out. Bess gave a nervous laugh. That sounds easy when you say it like that. For a moment all four looked at her. Bess flushed. Sorry. Amelia almost smiled. It was the second time below stairs that a small joke cut through fear. Then the silence returned. Not hopeless silence, working silence. That night, Amelia copied Dr. Weatherby's notes by hand. Every line, every date, every symptom. She made 2 copies. One she hid beneath the lining of her trunk. The other she gave to Mrs. Finch. Why 2? Because if one disappears, the truth does not disappear with it. Mrs. Finch nodded. Lady Marianne used to say the same. Amelia stopped writing. About papers, about anything important. For the first time, Amelia felt she was not merely uncovering Lady Marianne's actions. She was following them. The next morning she did something that frightened her more than entering the locked room. She asked the Duke for help. Not openly, not in the drawing room. She waited until Rosamond's afternoon walk. The Duke was standing near the lower garden wall with Lord Edmund, discussing drainage on the eastern fields. Amelia and Rosamond passed. Julian Ashcombe looked toward them. Rosamond curtsied. Amelia did the same. Then she said, "Your Grace, may I trouble you with a question concerning a book?" Lord Edmund smiled absently. A book. Amelia held up the French grammar. A reference for Lady Rosamond. The Duke looked at her. His expression did not change. Of course. Lord Edmund had no interest in French grammar. Within a minute he wandered toward the stable yard. Julian remained beside the garden wall. Rosamond looked between them. Amelia said softly, "Would you mind walking ahead for a moment?" Rosamond hesitated, then obeyed. Amelia waited until the girl was far enough away. "Your Grace, did you know? Lady Marianne Harcourt." The Duke's face changed. Not dramatically, but enough. "Yes." "Well, very." "Were you present when arrangements were made for Lady Rosamond's inheritance?" Julian did not answer immediately. The cold wind moved through the hedge. Amelia watched him. He looked toward Rosamond. Then back at Amelia. "Who told you to ask me that?" "No one. That is not an answer. It is the truth." He studied her. Then he said, "I knew Marianne intended Rosamond to have independent means. How much I do not remember the exact sum. Was there a trust?" "Yes." Amelia's pulse quickened. "Written, yes. Witnessed, yes. By you." The Duke's jaw tightened. "Partly. What does that mean?" "I witnessed a schedule attached to the arrangement." "Do you have a copy?" "No." Amelia felt disappointment. Then Julian added, "But I once had a letter from Marianne describing the terms. Once it disappeared years ago." Amelia's eyes narrowed. "From where?" "My London house." "Was anything else taken?" "No, moment. Only that letter." The wind seemed colder. "Did you report it?" "At the time I thought it misplaced. And later Marianne was dead." The Duke looked toward Ravenshade Hall, and Edmund refused to discuss her affairs. Amelia lowered her voice. "Someone is altering Rosamond's settlement." Julian turned sharply. "What? I cannot prove it yet." "Then you should not make that accusation." "I know." Amelia met his gaze. "That is why I am asking questions instead." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "You are in danger." Amelia almost laughed. "I had noticed." "This is not amusing. Neither is standing behind dinner guests. But we survived that." A flicker crossed his expression. Not quite a smile. Close. Then he became serious again. "What have you found?" Amelia did not tell him everything. Not Dr. Weatherby's notes. Not the grey packet. Not yet. She told him about the estate figures, the intercepted letters, the writing room, the torn trust paper, the reference to Lady Isolde. Julian listened without interruption. When she finished, he asked, "Does Rosamond know?" "No." "Good." Amelia frowned. "You approve of keeping her ignorant. I approve of not frightening a 15-year-old until we know what she must face." That answer surprised her. Not because it was kind, because it was practical. Julian looked again toward Rosamond. If Marianne's original instructions still exist, Lady Isolde is the most likely person to have them. I tried to write. Julian's expression darkened and intercepted. "Then we do not write." Amelia understood. "You will go to London. Number Lady Euphemia expects me to leave. If I leave now, she may relax." Amelia stared at him. "You mean to pretend you suspect nothing?" "Exactly." For the first time, Amelia realized the Duke was not merely willing to help. He understood concealment. He understood waiting. He understood that a trap worked only if the person inside it did not see the door closing. "When do you leave?" "Tomorrow morning." "And Lady Isolde?" I will find her. Amelia lowered her voice further. There is more. Julian waited. Lady Euphemia intends Rosamond to sign a revised settlement before her birthday. His expression hardened. When March? Then we have little time. He stepped closer. Miss Vale, from this moment, do nothing reckless. Amelia raised an eyebrow. You gave your chair to a governess in front of 30 people. That was manners. It was reckless manners. He almost smiled again. Then he said, Keep Rosamond safe. Find out what she is being asked to sign. Leave the rest to me. Amelia did not agree. Not because she distrusted him, because leaving the rest to powerful men was how Rosamond had arrived in this position. The Duke departed the next morning. Lady Euphemia was visibly relieved. Amelia was not. 3 days passed. Then Euphemia changed tactics. Rosamond's lessons were reduced. Her morning walks were cancelled. A dressmaker arrived. Then another. New gowns were ordered. Pearl trims, cream silk, pale blue velvet, gloves from London, a fur-lined cloak. The house began to prepare for something no one had explained. Rosamond noticed. Why am I being measured for evening gowns? Amelia kept her voice calm. Perhaps your father intends a gathering. Rosamond stared at her. Papa never intends gatherings. That was true. Lady Euphemia intended them. At dinner 2 evenings later, the explanation came. Lord Edmund announced that Ravenshade would host a large winter assembly in March. Families from 3 counties would attend. Rosamond set down her spoon. Why Lord Edmund looked toward Euphemia? The Countess answered, Because it is time you entered society properly. Rosamond went pale. I am not 16. You will be. And before the assembly, Euphemia continued, There are several family papers to settle. Amelia felt every muscle in her body tighten. Rosamond looked confused. What papers? Nothing difficult. A few signatures. Lord Edmund nodded without looking at his daughter. Merely housekeeping, my dear. Amelia watched him. Once again, peace. Always peace. At someone else's expense. Rosamond asked. May Miss Vale help me read them? Euphemia's eyes moved toward Amelia. No. Why? Because they are family matters. Amelia lowered her gaze before her expression betrayed her. The answer confirmed more than Euphemia realized. If the papers were harmless, Amelia's presence would not matter. 2 days later, Amelia began preparing Rosamond for the documents without telling her why. They practiced contracts, not real ones, simple household agreements. Amelia taught her to look for sums, dates, conditions, words written above crossed-out lines, pages added later, initials, different inks. Rosamond became fascinated. This is more interesting than French verbs. Do not tell France. Rosamond smiled. Then she saw Amelia's serious expression. Why are we doing this? Amelia considered lying. Instead, she gave a partial truth. Because soon someone may ask you to sign something important. Rosamond's smile vanished. Lady Euphemia, perhaps. Should I refuse? Not automatically. Why not? Because refusing without understanding tells the other person you are afraid. Amelia placed the practice document before her. Read first. Ask questions. Never sign because someone tells you that understanding is unnecessary. Rosamond stared down at the page. My father signs papers without reading them. Yes, that does not make it wise. Rosamond looked at her. You do not like Papa. Amelia paused. That was dangerous. Not politically, morally. She answered carefully. I think your father has mistaken avoiding conflict for keeping peace. Rosamond's eyes lowered. Is there a difference? A great one. For the first time in her life, Rosamond did not defend him. That change frightened Amelia more than anger would have. A week later, the first real paper arrived. Mr. Pritchard brought it to the schoolroom. Lady Euphemia requires Lady Rosamond in the library. Rosamond looked at Amelia. May Miss Vale come? No. Mr. Pritchard's answer was immediate. Amelia stood. Lady Rosamond has lessons. They are cancelled. By whom? Lady Euphemia. Rosamond's fingers tightened around her pencil. Amelia saw fear. She walked to the girl. Remember your arithmetic. Rosamond stared. Then understanding passed between them. Read. Ask. Do not hurry. Rosamond rose. She left with Mr. Pritchard. Amelia remained in the schoolroom. 5 minutes. 10. 20. She could not sit. At 30 minutes the door opened. Rosamond entered. She was pale, but she was holding the paper. Amelia stared. "How did you? Papa told me I could read it in my room before signing." "Your father did." Rosamond nodded. Lady Euphemia was angry. For once Lord Edmund had done something useful. Amelia took the document. It concerned Rosamond's maintenance and future household expenses. The language was formal, safe-looking. Then Amelia found the clause. Upon attaining her 16th year, Lady Rosamond Harcourt agreed that administration of certain funds would remain with Lord Edmund and Lady Euphemia until marriage. Amelia read it twice. Rosamond whispered, "Is that bad, perhaps?" How much money, the paper did not say. That was worse. Amelia turned the page. There was a reference to a prior schedule. No schedule was attached, she pointed. "Did you ask for this?" "Yes." "And?" Mr. Pritchard said the old schedule had been superseded. "By what?" "This." Amelia stared. A document could not safely replace another document that no one was permitted to see. She copied the wording. Then she gave the paper back. "What should I do?" "Ask for the original schedule." Rosamond's eyes widened. "Lady Euphemia will be furious." "Yes, and if she says no, ask why." Rosamond swallowed. "I am frightened." Amelia reached across the table. "So am I." Rosamond looked surprised. "You never look frightened." "That is because looking frightened is sometimes a luxury." The girl gave a small, uncertain smile. Then Amelia said, "Courage is not the absence of fear." She stopped. That sounded too much like a sermon. She corrected herself. "No, let me say it properly. Courage is reading the page while your hand is shaking." Rosamond nodded. The next day she asked for the original schedule. Lady Euphemia refused. Rosamond asked why. Dinner was miserable. Lord Edmund stared into his wine. Mr. Pritchard was summoned. Euphemia accused Rosamond of insolence. Rosamond did not cry. For the first time in her life the girl repeated the question, "Why?" The entire room went silent. Euphemia's face became red. Not because Rosamond had shouted, because she had not. A quiet question could be harder to punish. That night Rosamond came to Amelia's room. She closed the door. "I found something." From her sleeve she removed a small folded page. Amelia stood. "Where Papa's library?" "You searched his desk." "No." "It fell out when Mr. Pritchard opened a folder. I stepped on it." Amelia almost objected. Then she stopped. "What is it?" Rosamond unfolded the paper. It was not the trust schedule. It was an account statement. 3 transfers, all from a fund bearing Rosamond's initials. All sent during the previous year. 1 to a London dressmaker, 1 to a private creditor, 1 to Mr. Pritchard. Rosamond whispered, "Why is he being paid from my money?" Amelia stared at the sums. The amount transferred to Pritchard was large, far too large for ordinary wages. She copied everything. Then she told Rosamond to return the paper exactly where it had been. "But why?" "Because we want them to believe we know nothing." Rosamond's face changed. For the first time she was not merely frightened. She understood the strategy. That same week Amelia began building something of her own. It started quietly. Mrs. Dallow, the widow who kept the lodging house, had a daughter who struggled with reading. Amelia offered lessons on Saturday afternoons. 1 shilling. Then Bess asked whether Amelia could teach her sums. No payment. Mrs. Finch brought an old account book from her brother's shop. Within 2 weeks, Amelia had 3 village girls and 1 young widow learning basic arithmetic in the back room of Mrs. Dallow's house. She kept every coin, not because the amount was large, because it was hers. For the first time in her life, Amelia earned money no household could threaten to withhold through a reference. 1 shilling became 2. 2 became 5. 5 became 11. Small, almost laughable beside Ravenshade's estates. But independence did not always begin with a fortune. Sometimes it began with a pencil, a rented table, and 4 women, no one important thought worth educating. Amelia recorded every payment in a small notebook. Dates, names, amounts. She was building more than savings. She was proving to herself that if Ravensshade cast her out, she would not vanish. Then came the letter from London. Not through Ravensshade, not through Mrs. Dallow. The Duke had sent it through Dr. Weatherby. Amelia opened it in the physician's cottage. Lady Isolde had been found. She was alive. She had received none of Rosamond's letters. And she possessed something, not the original trust. A copy of a letter from Lady Marianne to her solicitor written shortly before her final illness. In it, Marianne referred explicitly to a fund intended to pass under Rosamond's own control at 16, not at marriage. Not under Euphemia, at 16. Amelia felt relief. Then she read the rest. Lady Isolde did not possess the signed schedule. Neither did Julian. The solicitor, Mr. Ellison, had retired. His former office had moved. The original records were uncertain. They had proof of intent. Not yet proof of the exact legal arrangement. Not enough. Still not enough. Then Dr. Weatherby said, "There is another problem." Amelia looked up. He handed her a note. Bess had been dismissed. That morning, no reference. No wages for the final week. Reason given theft. Amelia felt sick. What did she steal? Nothing. The accusation was invented. Dr. Weatherby looked grim. "She is at Mrs. Dallow's." Amelia went immediately. Bess sat in the lodging-house kitchen with red eyes. A small bundle of clothes lay beside her. "They said I took a silver spoon." "Did you know?" "I know." Bess began crying. Not loudly. That made it worse. "My mother will think I did it." Amelia sat beside her. "Listen to me. They dismissed you because you saw the tea tray." Bess looked up. "You think so?" "Yes." Amelia was certain now. Euphemia was closing the circle. One witness removed. Others would follow. Amelia took out her little notebook. "How much did Ravenshade pay you?" Bess blinked. "What?" "Your wages," Bess told her. Amelia calculated. "I cannot match it." "Miss Vale." "But Mrs. Dallow needs help 3 mornings a week, and I need someone to assist with lessons on Saturdays." Bess stared. "You would pay me?" "Yes," with what Amelia almost smiled. "Money." Bess laughed through her tears. It was not much, but it changed something important. Euphemia could dismiss a servant. She could not decide whether Bess survived afterward. For the first time, Amelia's small work became a weapon. Not against Euphemia, against dependence. 3 days later, Mrs. Finch disappeared from the servants' quarters. No one knew where she had gone. Lady Euphemia claimed the old woman had left voluntarily. Amelia did not believe it. Mrs. Finch's coat was still hanging near the kitchen. Her spectacles remained beside her bed. Her prayer book was under her pillow. People did not begin new lives without their spectacles. Amelia asked Mr. Pritchard. He said Mrs. Finch had gone to relatives, where he did not know. When? Before dawn. Without her belongings, his face tightened. "You ask too many questions," Amelia replied. "That has been mentioned." He stepped closer. "You should be careful." Amelia looked at him. "So should you." The words escaped before she could stop them. Pritchard's expression changed. There, a mistake. Too direct. Too revealing. He walked away. That evening, Lady Euphemia summoned Amelia. No tea this time, only a document on the table. "Your position is terminated." Amelia looked at it. "Effective immediately, at the end of the week." "Reason?" Lady Euphemia smiled. "You have encouraged disobedience. Rosamond has become argumentative. You have interfered in family affairs, and there have been complaints from the village concerning your outside employment." Amelia's stomach tightened. Her lessons, Euphemia knew. A governess employed in this house does not sell lessons in a lodging house like a tradeswoman. I did not know my hours belonged to Ravenshade. Your reputation belongs to Ravenshade while you live under this roof. Amelia stared. There it was, the entire structure in one sentence. Her time, her reputation, her income, her future, all treated as things another person might own. Amelia read the dismissal paper. There was a space for her signature. She placed it back on the desk. "I will not sign." Euphemia's eyebrows lifted. "It acknowledges only that you received notice." "Then it does not need my signature." The room went very still. Euphemia leaned back. "You have become insolent." "No." Amelia met her gaze. "Only careful." For the first time in her life, Amelia refused to apologize for understanding a document. Euphemia's voice lowered. "You will leave on Saturday." Amelia curtsied. Then she walked out. She had 3 days. 3 days to find Mrs. Finch. 3 days to protect Rosamond. 3 days before Euphemia could control every paper entering or leaving the girl's hands. That night Amelia packed half her trunk. Not all. She wanted the servants to see preparation. She wanted Euphemia to believe she had accepted defeat. The next morning she cried in the schoolroom. Deliberately. Not much. Enough. Rosamond was horrified. "You are leaving." Amelia wiped her eyes. "It appears so. Why are you crying?" "Because I am unhappy." That part was true. Outside the door a floorboard creaked. Someone listening. Amelia lowered her voice. "Perhaps Lady Euphemia is right." Rosamond stared at her. What Amelia looked toward the door. "I have interfered too much." Rosamond's expression changed. Then she understood. She lowered her head. "Yes, perhaps you have." The listening footsteps moved away. Rosamond waited, then whispered, "Was that good?" Amelia almost laughed. "Very." They began performing defeat. Rosamond stopped asking questions at dinner. Amelia apologized to Mr. Pritchard for her sharp words. She told the cook she hoped Lady Euphemia would provide a reasonable reference. She allowed one servant to overhear her worrying about finding another position. By Friday morning the house relaxed. That afternoon Lord Edmund announced something unexpected. The March Assembly would be moved forward to Saturday evening, tomorrow. Amelia felt cold. Why? A storm was expected the following week. Guests were already arriving in the county. The family papers would be signed before dinner. Euphemia had accelerated everything. Amelia had one day. Then Bess arrived at the servants' entrance. She carried a message from Dr. Weatherby. The Duke had returned. Quietly. He was staying at the village inn, and he had found Mr. Ellison. Amelia's heart pounded. Alive. Alive. Did he remember the trust? Yes. Does he have records? Bess smiled. Some. Not all. Amelia almost closed her eyes in relief. Then Bess's smile vanished. There is more. What, Mrs. Finch is with him? Amelia stared. Where? At the inn. She was not sent to relatives. What happened? Bess lowered her voice. Mr. Pritchard locked her in an unused cottage on the North Estate. A tenant found her. Amelia felt anger rise so quickly she had to grip the table. Was she harmed, numb, or frightened? Cold? But she has something. What? Bess took a folded note from her sleeve. Mrs. Finch found the key to the black writing box. Amelia looked up. Tonight. She understood at once. They could not wait until morning. If the box contained evidence, Euphemia might remove it before the signing. At midnight, Amelia entered the writing room for the second time. This time she was not alone. Rosamond stood beside her. You should not be here. It is my mother's room. That ended the argument. Bess waited in the corridor. Amelia crossed to the black box. The dust had been disturbed again. She inserted the key Mrs. Finch had sent. It turned. The lid opened. Inside were letters, receipts, a small book of estate figures, and beneath them, a sealed envelope. For Rosamond upon her 16th year. Rosamond made a sound, almost a sob. Amelia touched her arm. Do not open it yet. Why? Because if we take anything, they will know. Amelia examined the contents carefully. Then she saw a folded document beneath the envelope, not the original schedule. A handwritten list, 3 names, Lady Isolde, Julian Ashcombe, Nathaniel Ellison, solicitor. And beneath them, copies delivered. Rosamond stared. Copies? Amelia whispered. Yes. Lady Marianne had not trusted one hiding place. She had made 3. Then footsteps sounded. Not distant. Close. Bess hissed from the corridor. Someone is coming. Amelia closed the box, locked it. Rosamond moved toward the curtain. No. Amelia grabbed her wrist. Not again. They slipped through the second door connecting the writing room to the old library. Amelia had noticed it earlier, but never tried it. It opened. They entered the library. Voices approached from the corridor. Lady Euphemia, Mr. Pritchard. Amelia and Rosamond crouched behind a large cabinet. The writing room door opened. Euphemia spoke. Tomorrow she signs. Pritchard answered. And if she refuses, her father will insist. What if the governess interferes? She leaves before noon. Rosamond's hand found Amelia's in the darkness. Euphemia continued. After Rosamond signs transfer the remainder, all of it, all that can be moved without immediate question. Pritchard hesitated. That is dangerous. So is leaving money in the hands of a girl who has suddenly learned to read accounts. Rosamond's fingers tightened. Then Pritchard asked, "And the original schedule?" "Burn it, if Ellison still has it." Amelia's breath stopped. Euphemia laughed softly. "Do not look frightened, Mr. Pritchard. By tomorrow night, the county will have seen Rosamond sign willingly before her father, her relations, and half the nobility." A pause. Then her voice sharpened. "Once the witnesses see her signature, who will believe a governess, an old servant, or a disgraced physician afterward?" Amelia felt something change inside her. Euphemia had just revealed the shape of her protection. The crowd, the very people who made her powerful, the same people who had laughed while Amelia stood behind the guests. Lady Euphemia needed the crowd to witness Rosamond's surrender. Amelia suddenly understood what had to happen. Not in a private room, not through whispered accusations, not by stealing documents and fleeing. The truth had to be revealed in the same place Euphemia intended to use as her shield, before everyone. Rosamond leaned close. Her whisper was barely audible. "What do we do, Amelia?" Looked toward the thin line of candlelight beneath the door. Then she answered, "Tomorrow you sign nothing until they bring the papers into the ballroom." Rosamond stared at her. "Why would they do that?" "Because you are going to ask your father to let the family witness how obedient you are." Rosamond's eyes widened. Amelia continued, "Lady Euphemia wants an audience. We shall give her one." The next evening, Ravenshade Hall blazed with candlelight. Carriages crowded the drive. Ladies stepped onto the stone terrace beneath umbrellas held by footmen. Gentlemen arrived in black coats and white gloves. Music drifted from the ballroom. The same kind of people who had laughed at Amelia now filled the room again. Only more of them. Amelia wore her plain grey governess dress. Her trunk stood packed upstairs. Everyone believed she would leave in the morning. Rosamond wore pale blue. She looked terrified. But she stood straight. Lord Edmund entered the ballroom with Lady Euphemia. Mr. Pritchard carried a leather folder. Amelia saw Dr. Weatherby near the far doors. Mrs. Finch stood hidden behind a group of servants. Lady Isolde had arrived in a dark travelling cloak, and beside the fireplace stood the Duke of Greyhaven. He had come openly at last. Euphemia saw him. For the first time since Amelia had known her, the Countess lost control of her face. Only for 1 second, but Amelia saw it. Julian bowed. "My lady," Euphemia recovered. "Your Grace, we were not expecting you." "I know." The musicians stopped. Lord Edmund cleared his throat. "Rosamond." "The papers." Mr. Pritchard opened the folder. The ballroom quieted. Rosamond looked at Amelia. Amelia gave the smallest nod. Rosamond stepped forward. "Papa." "Yes, my dear, I will read them here." Euphemia smiled too quickly. "There is no need." Rosamond looked around the room. "But Lady Euphemia wished the family to see that I sign willingly." A murmur passed through the guests. Euphemia could not object without contradicting herself. Lord Edmund gave an uncertain smile. "Quite right, quite right." Mr. Pritchard placed the papers on a small table. Rosamond approached. Amelia remained behind her. Exactly where Lady Euphemia had once said, a governess belonged. Behind the guests, behind the family, behind everyone important. Then the ballroom doors opened. An elderly man entered carrying a leather document case. Julian Ashcombe turned toward him. Lady Isolde stepped forward. Mrs. Finch began to cry. Mr. Pritchard went white, and Amelia knew the trap had finally closed. The elderly man crossed the ballroom slowly. He was thin, silver-haired, and dressed with the plain precision of someone who had spent his life among documents rather than drawing rooms. Mr. Nathaniel Ellison, the former solicitor. Lady Euphemia recovered first. She stepped toward Lord Edmund. "This is highly improper." Ellison stopped beside the small table where Rosamond's unsigned papers waited. "Improper, my lady." His voice was quiet. "I had thought a young woman being asked to surrender control of her property might be permitted to know what property she possesses." The ballroom became still, not merely quiet. Still, a gentleman near the fireplace lowered his glass. One of the ladies who had laughed at Amelia weeks earlier stopped whispering. Lady Euphemia looked around the room. She understood exactly what was happening. The audience she had summoned to secure Rosamond's obedience was beginning to turn into something else. Lord Edmund cleared his throat. "Ellison, I confess, I do not understand why you are here." The solicitor looked at him. "That is part of the difficulty, my lord." Euphemia intervened. "Surely any legal business can be discussed privately." Julian Ashcombe stepped away from the fireplace. "No, one word. Nothing more." Euphemia looked at him. The Duke continued. "The girl was brought here to sign before witnesses. The explanation may also be given before witnesses." A murmur of agreement moved through the room. Rosamond stood beside the table. Her hands trembled. Amelia saw it. Courage was reading the page while your hand was shaking. Rosamond did not step back. Mr. Pritchard moved toward the leather folder. "Perhaps we should postpone. Do not touch those papers." The voice came from the servants near the door. Everyone turned. Mrs. Finch stepped forward. She wore her old black dress. Her spectacles had been returned to her. Her face was pale from exhaustion, but she walked into the ballroom without lowering her head. Lady Euphemia stared at her. "You?" Mrs. Finch stopped. "Yes, my lady." Pritchard's face tightened. This woman was dismissed. "No." Mrs. Finch looked directly at him. "I was locked in the North Cottage." A shock passed through the crowd. Pritchard laughed too quickly. "Absurd." Mrs. Finch did not raise her voice. "Mr. Daniel Price found me there yesterday morning. His family has rented Northfield Farm for 22 years. He cut the latch because I had been calling for help since before dawn." Ellison opened his document case. "Mr. Price has provided a written statement." Pritchard looked toward Euphemia. The Countess did not look back. For the first time he understood that he might be standing alone. Lord Edmund stared at Mrs. Finch. "Why would anyone confine you?" Mrs. Finch looked at him with such sadness that Amelia almost turned away. "Because I remembered your first wife." The Earl's face changed. "Marianne." "Yes, my lord." Mrs. Finch reached into her pocket, and because I kept something she gave me before she died, she placed the small brass key on the table. Lady Euphemia's fingers tightened around her fan. Rosamond looked at the key. Amelia stepped closer to her. Ellison said, "Perhaps we should begin with the trust." He removed several folded papers. They were old. The edges had yellowed. One bore faded seals. Lady Euphemia spoke sharply. "Copies prove nothing." Ellison nodded. "Quite right. Therefore I did not bring only copies." The room seemed to contract. He placed a second document beside the first. "This, my lord, was retained in my former firm's deed chest under Lady Marianne Harcourt's family name rather than the Ravenshade estate name." Pritchard moved, only half a step. Julian noticed. So did Amelia. Ellison continued. "The file was not discovered immediately because my former practice changed premises after my retirement. The index was incomplete. His Grace's inquiry led us back to correspondence retained by my former clerk." He touched the paper. "This is the executed schedule." Rosamond's breathing stopped for an instant. Lord Edmund stared. "Executed." "Signed. Witnessed. Filed with the related settlement papers." Ellison looked at Rosamond. "It provides that a defined fund, established for Lady Rosamond's benefit, was to remain administered during her childhood, then pass under her own direction upon her 16th year, subject only to ordinary safeguards advised at that time." Rosamond whispered, "My own direction, yes. Not her husband's, no. Not Lady Euphemia's, no. Not her father's indefinitely." Ellison hesitated. "No." The answer struck harder because it was so simple. Rosamond looked at Lord Edmund. "Papa." He seemed suddenly older. "I did not know." Euphemia turned toward him. "Edmund, do not be ridiculous." Ellison lifted another page. "Your signature appears here, my lord." The Earl walked closer. He stared at the document. His lips parted. "I remember signing papers." "Do you remember their purpose?" Marianne said. She wished Rosamond protected. Ellison nodded. "Precisely." Euphemia gave a small laugh. "Protected from what?" No one answered. The silence was answer enough. Then Amelia saw Pritchard edge toward the side door. Julian moved casually into his path. "Not yet, Mr. Pritchard." The steward stopped. Euphemia lifted her chin. "Even if such a settlement exists, administration may have required adjustment." Ellison looked at her. It did not authorize the transfers listed in the estate statements I have reviewed. The room stirred again. Lord Edmund turned. What transfers? Amelia saw fear enter Pritchard's face. Not nervousness, fear. Ellison removed a ledger copy. 3 substantial withdrawals were made during the past year from funds bearing Lady Rosamond's initials. 1 paid a London dressmaker. 1 was directed to a private creditor associated with Lady Euphemia's household expenditure. The 3rd was paid to Mr. Pritchard. All eyes moved toward the steward. He swallowed. Estate reimbursement. For what? Ellison asked. Pritchard did not answer. Lady Euphemia did. Administrative services. Ellison looked at her. Then there will be invoices. Euphemia said, nothing. Receipts, nothing. Written authorization from Lord Edmund, nothing. From Rosamond's trustees under the original arrangement, nothing. The silence returned. 3 times Amelia had heard silence used to humiliate the powerless in Ravenshade Hall. Tonight it had changed sides. Pritchard looked at Lord Edmund. My lord, surely you will not permit servants and strangers to servants. Julian's voice cut across him. Mrs. Finch served this family longer than you have administered it. Pritchard flushed. And Miss Vale. A governess. Yes. Julian looked toward Amelia. A governess who appears to have read the accounts more carefully than the steward. Several people in the ballroom laughed. Not cruelly. Not at Amelia. At Pritchard. He heard it. So did Euphemia. Amelia remembered the night she had stood behind the guests, while laughter moved down the table. She felt no pleasure now, only recognition. Public opinion was a wind. People with status often mistook it for a wall until it changed direction. Euphemia pointed toward Amelia. This woman engineered all of this. Amelia remained where she was. Perhaps. The Countess stared. Amelia continued. I asked questions. That is hardly a crime. You manipulated Rosamond. Rosamond spoke before Amelia could answer. No. Her voice shook. Everyone turned. Rosamond swallowed. Then she repeated it. No. Lady Euphemia's face hardened. Rosamond Miss Vale taught me arithmetic. She taught me to read a document before signing it. She taught me that asking why is not insolence. Rosamond looked at her father. No one manipulated me into discovering that my money had been used without explanation. Lord Edmund closed his eyes briefly. Not because he was confused, because there was nowhere left to look. Lady Isolde stepped forward. She removed her travelling gloves 1 finger at a time. I should also speak. Euphemia turned toward her. You have done quite enough by arriving here uninvited. Isolde smiled without warmth. My sister invited me 8 years ago. You made certain the invitation never reached me. She held up several folded papers. These are letters Rosamond wrote during the past 3 years. Or rather copies she kept in her lesson books. I have seen them today for the first time. Rosamond stared at her. Aunt Isolde. Isolde's expression softened. My darling girl. Rosamond's eyes filled. Lady Euphemia said you no longer wanted me. Isolde looked at the Countess. Lady Euphemia has said many things. Ellison added. Lady Isolde also possesses a copy of Marianne's letter to my office, stating her intention that Rosamond should control her own fund at 16. Euphemia laughed. Letters. Sentiment. Old recollections. None of this proves wrongdoing. Dr. Weatherby stepped forward. Then perhaps we should discuss the tea. The atmosphere changed immediately. This was different. Money embarrassed. Illness frightened. Euphemia stared at him. You were dismissed from Lady Marianne's care. Yes. Why are you here? Because I should have returned sooner. He opened his black bag. I retained my notes. He placed them on the table. I recorded repeated confusion after prepared drinks, periods of improvement when certain doses were withheld, complaints of bitter residue, and a sudden worsening after I was removed from her care. Lord Edmund gripped the edge of the table. Are you accusing someone of killing Marianne? Dr. Weatherby shook his head. No. Amelia watched Euphemia. For the first time that evening, the Countess seemed relieved. The physician continued. I cannot prove the cause of Lady Marianne's death. I will not pretend certainty where I have none. But I can say that her symptoms concerned me enough that I attempted to question how her medicines were being administered, and I can say that I was dismissed immediately afterward. Euphemia's relief vanished. Bess stepped out from beside Mrs. Finch. Several guests looked puzzled. They did not know her. That mattered. Truth had begun where Ravenshade never thought to look, among those who carried trays. Bess curtsied. I saw Mr. Pritchard put a grey paper packet beside Miss Vale's tea. Pritchard shouted, "Liar!" The entire ballroom recoiled. Bess flinched. Amelia stepped beside her. Dr. Weatherby lifted one hand. The packet was preserved. He did not claim to know its contents. He said only that the residue should be examined by someone qualified if further proceedings required it. Ellison nodded. A magistrate has already been informed that questions may arise concerning the financial records and Mrs. Finch's confinement. The word changed everything. Magistrate. Not vengeance. Not melodrama. Procedure. Questions. Statements. Records. Pritchard looked toward the door again. Julian did not move. He did not need to. Lord Edmund stared at his steward. "Did you lock Mrs. Finch in that cottage?" Pritchard said nothing. "Did you? I was instructed." He stopped. Too late. A ripple moved through the ballroom. Lady Euphemia turned on him. "Do not be a fool." Pritchard stared at her. "You told me to keep her away until the papers were signed." The room erupted. Not shouting. Whispers. Gasps. A chair scraped against the floor. Euphemia went white. Pritchard heard what he had done. He tried to correct it. "I mean, Julian spoke." "No. Let the sentence remain as you gave it." Pritchard's mouth closed. Amelia almost pitied him. Almost. He had spent years surviving beneath a stronger person's authority. Now fear had made him honest for 1 second. That second was enough. Lord Edmund turned toward his wife. "Euphemia." She faced him. "Do not look at me as though you are innocent." The Earl recoiled. "You signed whatever was placed before you. You ignored Rosamond whenever she became inconvenient. You allowed Marianne to manage everything because it spared you effort. And after she died, you allowed me to manage everything for the same reason." Her voice grew sharper. "Do you imagine weakness becomes virtue merely because it speaks softly?" No one in the room moved. Lord Edmund seemed struck, not by a lie, by a truth spoken for the wrong reason. Rosamond looked at him. "Papa." He turned toward her. She was crying now. Silently. "You always said you wanted peace." Lord Edmund's face broke. "I did." Rosamond shook her head. "No. You wanted quiet." Amelia felt the words land across the ballroom. Not peace. Quiet. There was the difference. Lord Edmund looked at his daughter as if he were seeing the cost of his silence for the first time. Euphemia stepped away from them. Very well. She looked around the ballroom. Every face had changed. The women who once smiled at her now avoided her eyes. Gentlemen stood stiffly. A countess near the windows whispered to her husband. A baronet who had laughed at Amelia's humiliation looked at the floor. Euphemia understood. Her punishment had already begun. Not prison, not ruin, announced by trumpet. Something slower. Invitations that would stop arriving. Visits that would not be returned. Conversations that would cease when she entered rooms. Doors once held open without question would begin closing. In her world, reputation was currency. And before the same class of people she had once used to humiliate Amelia, Euphemia had become socially poor. Ellison gathered the unsigned revised settlement. "Lady Rosamond will not be signing this." Rosamond looked at the paper. "No." Her voice was stronger. "I will not." Ellison nodded. "The original arrangements will be reviewed properly. The transfers will be examined. Any money improperly removed should be restored through the appropriate process." Pritchard sank into a chair. Lady Euphemia remained standing. Lord Edmund looked toward Ellison. "And Mrs. Finch. Her confinement should also be reported fully." The Earl nodded. "Do it." His voice sounded hollow. "Do whatever is necessary." Then he turned toward Mrs. Finch. "I am sorry." Mrs. Finch looked at him. For 8 years he lowered his head. "Yes, for 8 years." She studied him. Then she said, "That apology belongs to your daughter more than it belongs to me." Rosamond stood very still. Lord Edmund approached her. She did not move toward him. "My dear, do not." He stopped. Rosamond wiped her face. "I do not hate you." That seemed to give him hope. Then she continued, "But I do not trust you yet." Hope disappeared. Not forever. Not completely. Only enough. Lord Edmund nodded. I understand. Rosamond looked at him. No. She gave a sad little smile. But perhaps you will. It was not forgiveness, not rejection, something more difficult, a boundary. Amelia felt proud of her. Lady Euphemia looked toward Amelia. Of all the people in the room, she chose the governess. You think you have won? Amelia shook her head. No. Euphemia seemed almost surprised. Amelia continued. Rosamond has. The Countess stared. Amelia did not insult her, did not remind her of the chair, did not list the humiliations. Revenge would have made the moment smaller. Instead, Amelia stepped aside and gave Rosamond the space at the center of the room. Lady Euphemia's eyes filled. Only slightly. Then she spoke to Rosamond. I did what I believed necessary for this family. Rosamond answered. You did what gave you control. Euphemia's mouth trembled. Perhaps one day you will understand what it is to protect a name. Rosamond looked around the ballroom, at the guests, at the servants, at her father, at Amelia. Then she said, if protecting a name requires destroying everyone beneath it, the name is not worth protecting. No one applauded. Amelia was grateful. This was not theatre. It was a reckoning. Euphemia turned to leave. At the door she stopped. She looked back once. Her gaze met Rosamond's. I am sorry. The words sounded unfamiliar in her mouth. Rosamond did not answer. Not because she wanted to punish her, because some apologies arrived after the person receiving them had already learned to live without them. Euphemia left. Pritchard was escorted away from the ballroom to wait for the magistrate's questions the following morning. The guests did not resume dancing. There are evenings after which music would be an insult. Within an hour, carriages began leaving Ravenshade. The great assembly ended before midnight. The next morning, Amelia carried her trunk downstairs. Rosamond found her near the servants' entrance. Where are you going? To Mrs. Dallow's. But Lady Euphemia dismissed you. Yes, she has gone to stay with relatives. That does not change the fact that I was dismissed. Rosamond looked offended. Papa can reverse it. I know. Then stay. Amelia smiled. No. Rosamond stared. Why? Because I taught you not to depend entirely upon the decisions of people with more power. It would be poor teaching if I ignored the lesson myself. Rosamond's face crumpled. Amelia took her hands. I am not disappearing. You will continue your studies. With whom? With me, if you wish. At Ravenshade, no. In the village. Rosamond blinked. You want me to go to Mrs. Dallow's twice a week? Rosamond began to laugh through her tears. Lady Euphemia would faint. Then we should be thankful she is not here. For the first time in her life, Rosamond hugged her governess without first looking toward a door. 3 months passed. The remaining fund records were examined. Money that could be traced was returned to Rosamond's account. Mr. Pritchard lost his position and faced formal questions concerning both the estate finances and Mrs. Finch's confinement. Lady Euphemia did not return to Ravenshade. Her name continued to appear in society columns less and less often. No dramatic announcement declared her fallen. Her punishment came in envelopes that did not arrive. Lord Edmund changed slowly. Amelia trusted slow change more than sudden declarations. He began attending Rosamond's lessons, not to interfere, to learn. The first time he sat at Mrs. Dallow's kitchen table beside 3 village girls, studying arithmetic, he looked deeply uncomfortable. Bess whispered to Amelia, "His lordship is afraid of fractions." Amelia nearly laughed aloud. Mrs. Finch, restored to Ravenshade by Rosamond's request, rather than Lord Edmund's command, visited every Thursday. Dr. Weatherby came when weather allowed. Lady Isolde returned to London but wrote to Rosamond every week. The letters arrived unopened, and Julian Ashcombe came to the village occasionally, never with flowers, never with declarations, sometimes with books for the school, sometimes with figures from one of his estates for the older pupils to practice. One rainy afternoon he found Amelia alone in the little classroom, after the others had gone. There were 6 desks now. 6. The first lessons had begun with a rented table. Julian looked around. "You have built something." Amelia closed an account book. "We have built something," he smiled. "You still correct people, only when they require it." He glanced at the empty chair beside her desk. "May I?" Amelia looked at him. "Your Grace is asking permission to sit. I have learned that chairs can become politically dangerous." She laughed. A real laugh. No ballroom, no audience, no one watching. Julian sat. Outside, winter rain struck the windows. Inside, the small stove burned warmly. Amelia thought of Ravenshade, of the first chair, of the cold corridor, of Rosamond standing with shaking hands before an unsigned settlement. For the first time in her life, Amelia no longer measured her safety by whether a great household chose to keep her. Her little school now had 9 pupils. Bess received wages for assisting. Mrs. Dallow received rent. Amelia's accounts balanced. Every coin had been earned. Every decision was hers. Julian looked toward the rain. "Do you regret leaving Ravenshade?" Amelia considered it. No, not because Ravenshade held only pain. It did not. Rosamond was there. Mrs. Finch was there. There had even been kindness. But belonging purchased by silence was not belonging. She looked at the stove, then at the rows of simple desks. "No," she repeated. "I think I merely stopped standing where other people told me I belonged." Julian did not answer. He did not need to. A few days later, Rosamond arrived for her lesson carrying a parcel. She placed it on Amelia's desk. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside was a chair. Not grand, not carved. A sturdy walnut chair made by the village carpenter. Amelia stared. Rosamond grinned. "There is a brass plate underneath." Amelia turned it over. The inscription was small. "For Miss Amelia Vale, who taught me to sit nowhere by permission alone." Amelia touched the letters. For several seconds, she could not speak. Then Rosamond sat at one of the pupils' desks and opened her arithmetic book, as though nothing remarkable had happened. Outside, the rain turned softly to snow. Inside, the fire crackled. Amelia placed the chair behind her desk. Not above anyone, not below anyone, simply where she had chosen it. And in the end, dignity was not the chair another person gave you, but the right to decide where you would stand. If this story stayed with you, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and support us, so we can continue bringing you stories of courage, dignity, and justice restored.